You reach for a bottle of water and for your phone, check your notifications, open the tap, and expect a clear stream, and you think cold is just a number in a weather app. In the conifer forests of Karelia in the winter, spanning the end of 1939 into 1940, that habit turns into a risk. Water does not flow from a pipe here. It lies in layers, and every sip must be extracted with fire, time, and fuel, while any fire can be seen half a kilometer away. Why does a simple attempt to drink shorten your odds of making it to dawn? Because the world around you is snow, short daylight, darkness without city glow, and a war that does not care about your intentions. By the end, you will see 3 systemic reasons a modern person would not last a day in this setting, and one everyday thing we usually underestimate until it fails at home. We are inside a spruce and pine labyrinth, broken by frozen bogs and scattered villages. The road is a winter track pressed by runners and tracks. An officer's bark is your only internet, and a white smock over a quilted jacket is your interface with reality. You are not a romantic figure. You are a rifleman in a column that has to move, dig in, hold, and keep quiet after dark. Your clothing is not about style: padded jacket, puttees, felt boots, mittens, a white camouflage poncho. Your house is a dugout built from logs and fir boughs with a tiny metal stove that smokes and consumes wood like a creature with its own hunger. The rules are simple and unforgiving. After sunset, you mask light, lower your voice, hide your fire, and never touch bare metal with bare skin. The day is short, the forest is tight, the snow either squeaks or swallows sound, and everything you do is measured not in comfort, but in the risk of being noticed or frozen. Imagine you want a drink. You fill a mess tin with snow. Snow deceives. It looks abundant, but when it melts you get very little water. You add more, wait, add kindling to speed the melt, and learn quickly that any speed comes with smoke in your nose and a chance that the smell will reach those who sit still and watch white fields through a sight. Water without salt and fat draws heat out of you. It does not satisfy quickly, so you drink again and again. Tea is not ritual. Tea is survival technology. If the field kitchen is late or cut off, you hold your mug over a tiny stove and make sure cloth is between your lips and the metal, or the rim will bite and hold. Food is not a plate and not a menu. It is porridge served in a rush and fat that you do not slice but chip away. You eat not because it tastes good, but because it cools. You do not wait for dessert. You wait for the tremble along the insides of your arms to ease, the tremble that announces wet sleeves and lost heat. Want to compare prices? In the rear, a bread ration in rubles sounds like small change. Here the word water scrapes your throat because the price of water is not a coin. It is wood, minutes, and exposure. If you try to translate it into a modern household budget using the cost of a daily bread ration, you discover a simple truth. On the line, supply is a probability, and probability here is lower than you hope. Heat in a shelter feels like a technical problem until you face the available technology: shovel, axe, and discipline. A dugout is cut into crusted snow, roofed with logs, and chinked with moss and boughs. The ceiling starts warm, gets wet, and by morning crusts into ice because the breath of everyone inside rises, condenses, and freezes. The stove comes alive and then begs for more. Smoke does not behave. Draft follows the wind more than the stovepipe. Paper for kindling traveled through damp air and needs to be warmed against your chest while you move. Felt boots are wet by evening. Drying them is a risk because leather shrinks and the felt hardens. If you daydream, morning finds your footwear stiff like a bucket. Then your foot does not go in, which means you march in a damp sock, which means your toes go numb by midday. One spark in the boughs under the floorboards turns the room into a black bite that consumes everything you built. You want to throw the stove door open for faster warmth, but wide flame glows through the cracks and tells the night exactly where to look. Day and night stop being time. They become modes. Day mode is skis, brush cutting, hauling crates, chiseling a shallow foxhole out of frozen soil. The shovel rings on a crust, and every fistful is a lottery win you never meant to enter. Night mode is watch posts, sled lines, stove duty, and a fall into sleep that has no dreams and no alarm, only the certainty something will yank you back. Your wristwatch loses meaning because the crystal fogs, the band stiffens, and it is more useful to track sequences than minutes. Arrive, warm, pull back, listen, lay down, jump at every crack, listen again. Children are not here, but labor here ages anyone faster than any warning from parents. When a ski pole snaps and a pack pulls you into the snow, you stop grading the day in hours and start counting errors and strokes of luck. In the rear, pay has taste. On the line, pay is a line of ink waiting for a man who is not sure he will sign again. Translate it with modern baskets if you like. On the line, those numbers mean nothing to cold feet. Health is not an abstraction. It is a set of problems with specific causes. A cold is not a number in degrees Celsius. It is a wet cuff in wind that drains heat faster than you can walk to a stove. Frostbite does not shout. It is quiet. Skin pales and stops reporting, and silence makes it dangerous. Washing is a snow handful melted in your palm, a wipe you perform while guarding skin from the air. Iodine is the answer to too many questions. The dressing station is a similar dugout where breath hangs in sheets and smells of cloth and ointment. Female physiology demands privacy, water, and time. You will not find abundance of any. A wet bandage and a cramped room feed infections because washing properly costs fuel and minutes that the night will charge back with interest. When a cough takes hold, you do not hold a speech. You cover your face with cloth so sound does not leak through the thin walls, and you listen to hear whether your weakness carries through the trees as footsteps. Death here has many roots and few explanations, and the group compresses every cause into one sentence: too damp, too cold, too few hands and remedies. You seek safety and find the only law that works in the forest, the manual. You want fire, but flame is forbidden anywhere it might be seen. You want a cigarette, but your lighter flash in pitch dark is a signal flare. You learn not to want what used to make you feel like yourself. Discipline sounds like a peacetime word. Here it is the only way a column does not revert into a line of isolated dots lost among trees. An order is unpleasant because it does not ask for your view, yet precious because it has a shape and parts. Chaos is worse. Orders keep the sleds moving, keep the voices down, and keep the net of small routines intact. The nearest police are your squad mates who all know one person's slip multiplies across everyone else. Opposing logic is simple and effective. The fewer tracks, smells, and noises you leave, the better your chance that a step into black does not become your last trace. The forest law is geometry, lines of sight, height of trunks, depth of snow, the spacing of things that stop bullets. You accept this law, there is no one here to argue with, and nature wins every argument if you give it a little time. Nature is not neutral. Snow muffles sound, yet betrays you with a sudden squeal under a ski or with a brittle crack on a thin crust. Wind helps if it blows toward an observer, hurts if it spars with your chimney and scatters sparks into dry boughs. Stove smoke pools between trunks and weighs on lungs. You feel it not as statistics but as a tangible scrape that tempts you to open your collar and breathe deeper, and you regret it immediately because cold inside is worse than cold outside. Ditches, streams, and bog pools pretend to be asleep beneath hard sugar. One poor step and you are in water to the knee, and your felt boot becomes a stone once you reach heat, if you reach heat. The sky makes no promises. It closes fast and stays tight. Snow pellets turn distance into a white screen with no road lines, no features, only the recurring black of trunks and clipped shouts you cannot place. Layers of clothing save you and fight you. Every tiny task becomes deliberate. A button resists, a belt bites, a pot handle demands a repositioned grip. Each extra motion makes sound, and sound is a kind of light here. Money carries a different logic. Rubles do not warm you or dry a sock or feed the stove. Value becomes physical. Dry mittens, one more candle, a matchbox, a scrap of canvas, a reliable small shovel, a mess tin that will not buckle. Pay makes sense in the rear. On the line, safety comes from your stance toward objects. You learn to save movements instead of coins. Less bare metal, more cloth between skin and any surface. Fewer words, more hand signals. If you insist on comparing pay with modern outlays using the cost of a daily bread ration, you produce a tidy figure for a calm conversation. On the line, calm conversations do not heat anything. Social life redraws itself. Clothes erase difference. White smocks and quilted jackets make everyone look like a template, and the way you tie your belt becomes the only expression of taste. In the rear, gender is not debated. It is executed as work. On the line, the rare women you meet are medics who live by the same rules, with the same cold, the same mittens, and the same urgency. There are no formal estates, but informal, old hands and new hands divide small comforts, the place closer to the stove, the extra ladle of tea, the right to warm gloves first after a move. Privacy shrinks to scraps. Letters travel through other people's eyes. Walls carry words from mouth to ear with no consent. You master quiet because quiet saves heat and saves breath and saves you from unnecessary questions. You move along a winter road and measure not in kilometers but in the number of pines until a turn, the number of sleds until your load, the number of breaths until the next halt. You stop expecting gifts from the landscape and start trusting the smallest account, a knot tied right, a strap laid flat, a dry corner of cloth inside a pocket reserved for a moment when metal must be touched. If there is a small window for a supply run in daylight, you throw yourself into it because night turns every meter into a place you have not met. It feels easier for a moment when the line holds and the kitchen arrives, but that ease is false. The forest did not change its intentions. The weather does not bargain. Morning will bring a new crust, a new wind, new tracks that you must leave in a way that does not invite someone else to follow. Eventually, you stop expecting warmth as a condition. Warmth becomes an event, a mug of tea, a minute near a stove, a moment when your felt boots do not ring like wood. Safety becomes events too. A crack to the right was just a falling sheet of ice, and not a step. Smoke drifted down, not up. Money turns into weight, and weight turns into decisions. Carry one more candle or one more handful of dry bread. Pick up someone's lost mitten and pocket it. Find a dry twig and carry it home like currency. Social borders become short and clear. Who stays quiet? Who ties a mitten string right? Who never forgets to close the damper? This is what people observe and remember. You might ask where the habits are that make life feel like life. Music, books, a hot bath, a long kitchen talk. They exist here in substituted forms. A bath is a pot. Music is a ski's silent glide that does not announce you. A book is a manual repeated often enough to anchor your mind. Talk is a whisper during a short interval when the stove does not smoke and breath can leave your mouth without a cough. Every such moment arrives with a fee. Would you take off your mittens to fix a strap faster? It is a mistake here. Would you run into the dark to see if a neighboring team made it back? Caution here is measured by the traces you do not leave. You get better at juggling small things, yet the large frame does not budge. Climate remains climate. Logistics remain logistics. Regulation remains regulation. The forest remains the forest. Your only power is to bend risk downward. You start planning micro-movements. Set the pot so it will not slide. Remove a wet mitten in a sequence that never bears bare fingers. Feed a chip into the stove in a way that throws no sparks. You are not a film hero. You are a manager of small choices, and those choices decide whether your fingernails will feel normal by midday. Supplies turn into morale. One extra candle is proof the night can be lived through. One dry sock is confidence you will reach the next place where wood burns. One pan of water warmed to steaming is a belief a cough will not tear your chest. Break this morale, and rhythm collapses. If you speak too loudly, someone glances at you without expression. If you linger at the stove, someone does not find space. If you forget the damper, the morning soot on the ceiling reminds everyone where the mistake was born. You stop thinking of yourself as the main character of your story and start thinking of yourself as one person responsible for the shared air. You learn to read the forest like a public timetable. Where a path is pressed flat, someone else passed. Where the crust frosts in tiny needles, the wind turned last night. Where a birch sheds its skin into the snow, that bark might be dry enough to catch. Where a faint smell of smoke hangs, a stove is working somewhere, and somewhere someone is wagering that the air will carry it nowhere dangerous. You learn to stand still for a full minute with no visible reason, because the sounds of a forest can rewrite a plan, and the cost of stubbornness here is collected immediately. After enough nights, you notice how your body starts speaking a language of its own. It knows when to loosen a scarf just enough to keep moisture from freezing on your lips. It remembers to turn a spoon with a glove still between your skin and the handle. It braces for the silent pain of sliding your feet into boots that cooled too much during a watch. The education is hard and quick, and there are no diplomas. You also learn what is not allowed to become a habit. Complaints have a gravity that drags others down. Loud laughter has a radius that travels too far. Nostalgia reaches for warmth you cannot produce. You limit them the way you limit exposed skin. The permission structure is different here. Do you want to clean your hands? Ask yourself if you can spare the fuel. Do you want to write a long letter? Ask if the light will leak. Do you want to store food by your cot? Ask if mice will come and make noise that someone else will have to deal with. Instead of rules on paper, you carry rules that fit into the 2 or 3 pockets left in your mind. Warmth is shared. Silence is shared. Risk is shared. You do not need to hang a sign that says so. The arithmetic of movement changes. In a city, you measure a task in minutes. Here you measure it in losses. How much heat will I lose if I step out, and how much time will I spend to regain it? How much quiet will I burn if I strike this match? How much attention will I attract if I pull the stove too bright to chase a quick, deep heat? The answers come from experience rather than numbers. When you misjudge, you pay at once. You cough and cannot stop. Your fingers cannot hold a strap. Your breath becomes a visible cloud that tells others where you are. The curriculum offers immediate feedback, and the rumors of "you learn fast at the front" are only true in a narrow way. You learn what not to do, then you learn what you should have done instead, and sometimes the second lesson arrives too late. You begin to catalog the items that matter most, and the list is humbling. A strip of cloth for any metal handle. A bit of fat to put in tea so it stays with you a little longer. A dry scrap to wipe a lens or glasses without freezing your skin. A cord to keep a mitten from wandering away while you work. A pin for a torn strap that cannot wait. These are your luxuries. Not plush, not precious metals, not better versions of the same thing. Just the specific tools that shave fractions of risk from ordinary acts. It is hard to keep the modern mind away from the thought experiment of price tags, and yet the real currency is not rubles or their modern translation. It is hours without a cough. It is meters without a stumble. It is one unbroken night with only one stove duty instead of 2. You also start noticing how authority and care look different. Leadership is not speeches. It is a quiet, exact voice that names what gets done next and then makes it possible for others to do it. Care is not a lecture on wellness. It is someone handing you a candle stub without words. It is someone who waited 2 minutes by the stove so your boots would not harden a little more. It is someone who did not leave a pot's handle bare. Investments here are measured in actions so small they disappear if you blink. And because they disappear, people need to cultivate the habit of seeing them. That habit might be the only soft skill that transfers well from this place to yours. If you put all this together, you return to the simple question that started the thought, why does reaching for water and for your phone in a heated room become a risk here? That reflex was born in a world where water arrives without your labor, heat persists without your attention, and law works without your presence. Here, every baseline process is a chain. Each link leaks something you cannot freely spare: minutes, warmth, quiet, privacy, energy, morale. You cannot forget details because every detail is a component in safety's mechanism. The kind of attention modern life often demands, fast, broad, briefly focused, does not fit. The attention that works here is slow, patient, repetitive, and non-negotiable. Name the forces without decoration. The first systemic reason you would not last a day is climate multiplied by logistics. Cold and damp do not just reduce comfort, they set firm limits on range, on cooking, on how much light a small stove is allowed to throw, on what a bare hand may touch. The second reason is scarcity enforced by regulation. Water is snow, food comes with the column or not at all, heat is wood, law is the order of the moment. You never choose comfort, you choose what you will give up. Will you trade quiet for a hot drink? Will you trade warmth for a dark room that keeps you unseen? Will you trade sleep for a watch you wish someone else would take? The third reason is an environment that strips away individuality. White forest, white clothes, thin walls, shared air, shared noises. One person's error becomes everyone's problem. One person's good decision today can become the wrong decision tomorrow with one change of wind or one change in the crust. There is one more thought, and it is not about bravery or about toughness. It is about the reliability of the small civilian foundations you take for granted. The water system that gives clean water and carries waste away. The legal predictability that makes a flame in a house simply a hearth and not a signal with consequences. The medical access that treats a cough in warmth and keeps frost-bitten skin from turning into a silent enemy. As long as these elements work, you do not notice the volume of decisions they subtract from your day. That hidden subtraction is one of the most valuable services modern life performs. It is also why, here among snow and dark trees, a modern person would not last without a full mental reset. You cannot reach for water without thinking about smoke. You cannot want heat without thinking about light. You cannot make something louder when it must remain quieter. Comfort begins with calculation. Calculation is paid with attention, with time, and with discipline. If a moment feels easier, remember, this place does not reduce its demands because your feelings changed. The easier moment is not the end of difficulty. It is simply the doorway to the next set of requirements, and the line keeps moving whether you are ready or not. You could call that harsh. It is. You could call it unfair. It does not argue back. But there is a sober kind of confidence that grows on top of such constraints. It is the knowledge that a dozen small, precise choices carry you through a night that does not want you. It is the habit of thinking 2 steps ahead with no applause for doing so. It is the respect for what mundane infrastructure does for you back home without ever asking for thanks. And it is the lesson that a life can be lived with far less noise and far more intention when every action carries a price tag you can feel against your skin. If you carry only one thing away, let it be this: the small systems at home that never make headlines are the reason you do not feel the weight of the world pressing you flat. Remove them, and the weight returns immediately. Place yourself here for only a day, and you will learn that truth in a language your mind and body will understand without any need for translation.